Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going behind the scenes of one of the biggest names in retail, Sam Walton, the founder of Wal-Mart. And the best part is, we're getting the story straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We're diving into his autobiography, Made in America.
That's right, we're talking first-hand accounts, personal anecdotes, the whole 9 yards. We'll see how his experiences, his values, everything shaped Wal-Mart into the retail giant it is today. Plus, we'll touch upon his recognition by Time magazine as one of the people of the century. Talk about an impact.
Absolutely. So the question is, what can we, all these years later, learn from Sam Walton's journey? What made him tick? It all starts, I guess, with understanding the man himself. And he didn't exactly come from a life of privilege. Growing up during the Depression had a profound impact on him.
Right, it really did. When you grow up in a time where every penny counts, it tends to stay with you. And for Walton, that translated into an almost legendary frugality, which, believe it or not, became a core value at Walmart.
And you see it everywhere, right? The no-frills stores, the emphasis on efficiency, everything geared towards keeping costs low so they can offer those famously low prices. But here's the thing, even after he became, let's be honest, incredibly wealthy, he maintained a surprisingly simple lifestyle. No fancy cars, no private jets, not even a thing for expensive hotels.
Yeah, it's almost like a paradox, isn't it? You'd think someone with his wealth would be living large, but he never strayed from those deeply ingrained values of frugality and humility. And you know what? This wasn't something he just decided one day. It was instilled in him from a young age.
Right. Let's go back to Walton's early days. Long before Walmart, he cut his teeth in the business world with a Ben Franklin franchise, a good old-fashioned variety store. And there's this story from his book that always makes me chuckle. He decided to put a popcorn machine and a soft-serve ice cream maker right on the sidewalk outside the store.
Classic. Talk about a man who understood the power of a good promotion. He knew how to get people's attention, how to draw them in. He was always experimenting, always looking for an edge. And if you read the book, you'll find that his brother, Bud, who worked with him, never let him live down the joys of cleaning that ice cream machine.
Oh, I bet. Those less than glamorous tasks probably taught him a lot, though. I mean, in this case, about the power of low prices and good marketing. Two things that would, of course, become synonymous with Walmart later on.
Absolutely. And speaking of Walmart, his next move was a masterclass in risk-taking. While other retailers were focused on big cities, Walton, he set his sights on small towns, the places everyone else seemed to overlook.
Talk about going against the grain. It seemed counterintuitive at the time, but man, it was a stroke of genius. He saw an opportunity where others saw, well, nothing.
And it wasn't just a shot in the dark. There's this almost comical story about a Kmart executive finding Walton on his hands and knees in one of their stores, meticulously studying their operations.
Wow, talk about commitment. He was like a sponge, soaking up every detail. He wanted to understand the competition inside and out. Now, those early Walmart stores, they were pretty bare bones, weren't they?
That was the point. It wasn't about being flashy. It was about efficiency. Every decision, from the layout to the fixtures, was all about keeping costs down. Remember that frugality we talked about? It was ingrained in the DNA of those early stores.
And by keeping costs low, they could offer those low prices, right? It's like that old saying, a penny saved is a penny earned. And Walton, he took that to heart, both personally and in his business. But here's where it gets really interesting. Walton understood that a successful business isn't just about low prices. It's about people.
Absolutely. That's where his people first philosophy comes in. And this wasn't some empty corporate slogan. This was Walton putting his money where his mouth was. He insisted on calling his employees associates because he wanted them to feel like they were partners, not just cogs in a machine.
He truly believed that if his associates felt valued, they'd be more engaged, they'd provide better service, and happier customers, well, that's just good business. And he took it a step further, right?
Yeah.
He implemented things like profit sharing and stock options for employees, which was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Oh, yeah. It was unheard of in many ways. He understood that for his vision to work, everyone had to share in the success. And it wasn't just some abstract idea, it had a real impact on people's lives.
Definitely. In Made in America, he talks about these longtime associates who benefited enormously from those policies, like people retiring comfortably because of their Walmart stock. It proved that a company could be profitable and still take care of its people.
Absolutely. And this whole associates as partners thing, it came from a pretty simple place. Walton was on a road trip and saw a sign outside this small town store. And the sign listed all the employees as partners. And that little gesture, it just stuck with him. It sparked an idea that became a cornerstone of his entire business philosophy.
It's amazing how these seemingly small things can have such a huge impact. That was Sam Walton, though, always observing, always learning, and always looking for a better way to do things.
He really was. Always thinking, always innovating, never one to rest on his laurels, that's for sure. Which brings us to his management style, right? And I think hands-on is putting it mildly. The man was relentless.
He was, constantly visiting stores, poring over sales figures, you name it. I mean, the guy even carried around a little tape recorder to jot down ideas. Can you imagine?
Totally. It's like he couldn't bear to let a single thought slip away. And David Glass, who later became CEO of Wal-Mart, he actually described working with Walton as management by wearing you down. You know, there's that relentlessness again.
Yeah, I guess when you have that much drive and passion, it can be intense, to say the least. But you know what's interesting? For someone so focused on efficiency, Walton was initially hesitant about technology, computers, all that. Seemed counterintuitive, right?
It does, especially now, right? But remember, this was the early days of computers. Things were a lot different back then. What changed his mind was actually attending IBM school back in the 60s. It was like a light bulb went off. He saw how technology could streamline operations, cut costs, and ultimately lead to, you guessed it, happier customers.
And of course, he had David Glass, who was a bit of a visionary himself, to really champion that technological side of things, right?
Absolutely. Glass was instrumental in building Walmart's incredible distribution network, which was light years ahead of its time. I mean, they were using technology to track inventory, manage logistics, the whole shebang. It allowed them to get products onto shelves faster and cheaper than anyone else.
Which in the retail world is huge. Talk about a game changer. But here's where things get really interesting, and this goes back to what we were talking about with those small-town stores. Even as Walmart grew, and I mean really grew into this massive company, Walton never stopped emphasizing this idea of thinking small.
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? But that was pure Sam Walton. He truly believed that to be successful on a large scale, you had to stay focused on the small things, the details.
So what did he mean by thinking small? Give us the Sam Walton breakdown.
So for Walton, it was all about staying grounded, staying connected to what really mattered, the customer. It meant empowering store managers to make decisions, not some executive miles away in a corporate office. It was about cutting through bureaucracy, keeping things lean, and always, always, always putting the customer first.
And he walked the walk, too. He'd spent hours just walking the aisles of his stores, talking to customers, getting their feedback firsthand. It wasn't just a show either. He truly believed that the key to success was understanding those everyday shoppers.
He did, and he made sure everyone else at Walmart believed it too. I mean, he famously said, the customer is the only boss. It's such a simple statement, but coming from the founder of a company as big as Walmart, it carries a lot of weight.
It does, and it speaks to his core philosophy. Okay, so we've talked about his frugality, his innovative spirit, his focus on people. But we can't talk about Sam Walton without addressing Walmart's impact on, well, small-town America. Because his strategy of setting up shop in those rural communities, it definitely wasn't without controversy. It was a double-edged sword, for sure.
It really was a classic case of too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, you know?
Right, because on one hand, you have Walmart coming into these small towns, bringing jobs, lower prices, convenience, all that. But on the other hand, you have people saying, hey, they're driving out the mom-and-pop stores, they're changing the character of these towns.
Exactly. It was and is a complex issue. And to his credit, Walton, he addresses this in Made in America. He tackles it head on.
So what's his take? How does he justify it?
Well, his stance was basically that Walmart was meeting a need, that they were providing a level of value and service that just didn't exist before, and that ultimately, you know, competition is good for everyone. It forces businesses to improve, to offer better products, better prices.
And love it or hate it, you can't deny that Walmart's impact, it went way beyond those small towns. I mean, they completely revolutionized the retail industry. Suddenly, everyone had to adapt to this new world of low prices, huge selections, 24/7 shopping. It was a seismic shift.
It was, and Walton was right there at the forefront, leading the charge, breaking the mold. And you know what? He was just as demanding of his suppliers as he was of himself and his employees.
Oh yeah, from what I heard, he was notorious for that. He drove a hard bargain.
He did. He expected the absolute lowest prices, the fastest turnaround times, no excuses. And suppliers, they fell in line because, well, it was Walmart.
It was Walmart. Everyone wanted a piece of that pie. But, and I think this gets overlooked, it wasn't all about squeezing suppliers for every penny. Walton, he also understood the importance of building strong, mutually beneficial relationships.
Oh, absolutely. He knew that for this whole system to work, Everyone had to benefit. And a great example of this is the partnership that Walmart formed with Procter & Gamble. Back in the 80s, this was revolutionary. They were sharing data, streamlining their supply chains, all using technology. And the result, lower costs for everyone, which meant lower prices for consumers.
It's amazing how much influence one company, one man really, could have on an entire industry. And it all goes back to Walton's personality, his vision, that relentless pursuit of efficiency. But we can't just paint him as this, one-dimensional business titan, because he was also incredibly philanthropic, wasn't he?
Oh, without a doubt. Giving back was hugely important to him. He firmly believed in sharing the wealth, so to speak.
In what ways specifically?
Well, he and his family, they established the Walton Family Foundation, which has donated billions, with a B, to all sorts of causes. Education, environmental protection, you name it. Plus, he made sure his employees shared in the company's success with profit sharing, stock options, all those things we talked about earlier. That was practically unheard of back then. So yeah, his legacy extends far beyond the aisles of Walmart.
It really does. And in 1992, his accomplishments were officially recognized when he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is, a pretty big deal.
It's a very big deal. It's the highest civilian honor in the United States. And it just goes to show the scope of his achievements, his impact on American business.
Amazing. So we've talked about his upbringing, his business philosophies, his successes, the controversies. But before we wrap up, we have to touch on his 10 rules for building a business. He outlines these in Made in America, and they're full of these great little nuggets of wisdom.
They're fantastic. And you know what? They hold up remarkably well, even in today's world.
Like what? Give us some of your favorites.
Well, there's one that really resonates with me. It's swim upstream. It's all about challenging the status quo, thinking differently, blazing your own trail. And I think that's so important, especially in today's business world, where it's easy to just follow the crowd.
It is. You need that courage to be different, to stand out. What else?
Let me see. Oh, he was a big believer in communication too, like really big. He'd always say, communicate everything you possibly can to your partners, meaning your employees, your suppliers, everyone involved. It was all about transparency, keeping people in the loop, building trust. And he practiced what he preached. He'd share sales figures, his own mistakes, everything. It created this culture of radical transparency.
I love that. And it probably kept everyone on their toes too.
Yeah.
No hiding from the boss man.
Not a chance. But if I had to pick his most famous rule, the one that everyone knows, it's this one. There's only one boss, the customer. And he can fire everybody in the company from the chairman on down simply by spending his money somewhere else.
So good. It's such a simple statement, but it's so powerful. It reminds us that no matter how big or successful you get, it's the customer who's really in charge.
And that, my friend, is a lesson that's more relevant today than ever.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Sam Walton, I'm curious, what are your final thoughts? Are his principles, his strategies, are they still relevant today in this rapidly changing world, or are they a product of a different time?
That's a great question. And I honestly think that while the business landscape has changed dramatically since Walton's time, the fundamentals, the core principles, they still hold up. Hard work, innovation, a commitment to your people, and an unwavering focus on the customer, those things never go out of style.
They don't. And you know what? I think there's a lot we could all learn from Sam Walton, even if we're not, retail giants. His story is a reminder that with enough grit, a little bit of luck, and a whole lot of passion, anything is possible.
I totally agree. And maybe, just maybe, his think small philosophy can inspire us all to find success and fulfillment in our own lives, no matter what we're passionate about.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. It's been a pleasure exploring the fascinating world of Sam Walton with you all. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, the customer is always